Welcome to today's episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. My name is Adam Brsan.
And I'm Chris Smith.
If you've yet to do so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And if you love this podcast, don't forget to share it with a friend or colleague. We greatly appreciate your help and support.
Eric, I appreciate you being on Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between to have a conversation with you, one of the top agency owners in this string of conversations this winter. And we're going to spend the next 25, 30, 35 minutes or so walking through some questions that are both ground level and high level. So if you're watching, something we're going to say today is going to connect with you. If you are watching, like, comment, subscribe, engage with the content so that the social media algorithms can share that content with others around. Eric, just real briefly, in case there's somebody that lived under a rock, introduce yourself to whoever's watching so they know who they're listening to.
Oh, I think you could have missed me without living under a rock. But yeah, I appreciate the. I'm an integrity partner now, Integrity Marketing Group. Most of you guys probably know who that is. And so, been in the industry I got my license in 2003. So what are we going on? February 2003. So in February, it'd be 22, starting the 23rd year, doing this crazy racket. And it's so funny, dude. When I first started, I never thought I would be in this business that long. In fact, I'm in Texas. And in Texas, when I got my license, we have a grandfather clause here. I don't know if it's that way in New Jersey, but grandfathers, like if you've been continuously licensed in good standing for 20 years in the state of Texas, you no longer have to do continuing education.
That's some technical stuff for you.
Yeah. It's not as cool as it sounds in the sense that, obviously we do Medicare, we do annuities, so you got to stay current with all that. But on the life and health side, I don't have to do those 24, 26 hours or whatever it was. Now I've forgotten because it was a couple years ago. But when they told me that, getting my license, I remember thinking to myself, because I was 27 at the time, I was like, who would be in the 20 years? Oh my God, if I'm doing this in 20 years, I'm going to slit my wrist, but yet here I am. And I have to tell you, dude, the exemption is super nice. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, over the course of the last 12-ish months, we've seen a lot of carriers exit the market, some products enter the market, probably a little bit more flux than normal in what we sell. Are there any other interesting reflections you can have over the course of the year at the agency owner and managing partner level?
I think, obviously the whole game, the casino, so to speak, of the insurance market is based on interest rates. And so, I think we're in for a baller couple of years, frankly. On the health side, it was super annoying, I think, this year, all the proposed changes and people getting ready for it. But I think, obviously they found some sense there and kind of like press pause on that. It was a good AEP for us. I'm sure for you guys as well. I think that's only going to get better. And it's not meant to be a political statement. It's just when you have a regulatory philosophy of just micromanaging, you end up having those unintended consequences. And I just don't think under the incoming administration, I don't think you're going to see as much of that aggressive kind of heavy handedness. The other thing that a lot of people missed this year, but the reason I picked it up is not. I have my ex-wife went through law school. She's an attorney, and I audited several of her classes. And when I was going through those classes, I learned about this thing called Chevron deference that the Supreme Court had. You're familiar with it? So for your audiences, for your audience that doesn't know, there was a case back in the 70s, Chevron versus United States, Chevron, the gas company. And basically the idea is this, right? So you have Congress passes laws, right? And they're really in charge of the legislation, the law, right? But then under the executive branch, you have all these agencies that have proliferated. I think there's like 400 and some odd agencies now. Half of them overlap each other and have conflicting but these agencies have guidance that they release. Like, okay, imagine here's a new incoming administration, and their philosophy may be different than the previous one. And so the people that took over the agency write all these rules saying, okay, well, we are interpreting the law now. Like, here's the law that Congress passed, but we're interpreting how we're going to enforce that and what we think it means. And so the last administration did it this way. We're going to do it this way. And I mean, we were talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of federal law that are not really passed by Congress. They're written by these agencies. And up until, in fact, there's a Supreme Court justice right now, Neil Gorsuch. He has a book out that I recommend everybody read. It's called Overruled. And it just talks about the proliferation of these agencies and the proliferation of these laws and rules that govern literally every aspect of your life that you're not even familiar with. And the estimate is that there's so many unknown law that's out there that the average American is committing a dozen felonies a year without even knowing it, because here's a new rule that we wrote, and now you're in violation of it, right? So, and he's got a bunch of entertaining stories. The book is hilarious because he's got all these entertaining stories about just normal people that are going about their business, got swept up in some government prosecution. Yeah. And but anyway, when Chevron sued the government over something, and the court decision back in the 70s was this: that if the government and you were in court together, then the court had to defer. Okay, that's the deference part. They had to defer to the agency's interpretation of their authority, right? So where that really affects us is as on Health and Human Services, HHS, and also on the financial side, right, with FINRA and all the other things that even without a securities license, those things affect you. And so, but especially in the Medicare business, right? Because, if you're selling Medicare Advantage, you have all these CMS rules. CMS is the agency's writing these rules, and the government has to defer, not the government, the courts have to defer to the government's interpretation of the law. That's what Chevron deference was. And so it's now you can have your own opinions of whether that's a good or bad thing. But the court this last year, a few months ago, overturned that precedent. Yeah. Meaning that there's no more Chevron deference. So in other words, it's going to dramatically reduce and water down the weight of these agencies' rules that they're putting out. And it's going to require Congress to actually go pass a law that addresses whatever the particular situation is. Otherwise, the court can decide on a case-by-case basis, which is amazingly positive if you're concerned about or affected by an overwhelming amount of new rules and regulations, which I think in our industry we are. So I think that's huge. That's awesome. And it just makes this a really exciting time to be in the business.
Yeah, they basically said that the administrative state doesn't have the legislative authority that they've acted with for so long, right?
Well, they gave it to themselves. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like you think to yourself, well, does that mean that this regulatory body, and I'm not going to name them on social media, really doesn't have any regulatory authority besides the stuff they've created for themselves? And if that's the case, it's just more untapped potential when used properly. What do you think the industry itself is going to look like in 2025? Maybe not significantly different, but we went through a wave of private equity acquisitions, which is awesome for the folks that earned it. We went through a phase of carrier retractions, kind of back to where we were pre-2020. What do you think the industry itself at the personal producer level looks like in 2025?
Well, I think there's an old Chinese saying, in chaos, there's opportunity, and which I love. And people that are in the PNC world, they're totally used to this, right? Like, I mean, carriers enter and exit the markets all the time on the PNC side, because, their risk exposure gets too high, new hurricane wave weather patterns, whatever the case may be. On the life and health side, it's crazy. Mortality tables, yes, they change over time, but not like that. It's not really, it's just responding to regulation is what is driving a lot of these moves. And so I think it's reasonable to assume there's going to be a lot less regulatory activity, let's say, in the next, year or 2 years, at least until the next midterm election. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to see a lot of carriers we're seeing carriers right now creating new products, getting excited about rolling out new stuff. The carriers that have left the market, I mean, there's all kinds of business decisions why a huge company that, there's all these mergers happening and, okay, we're going to spin off this piece of business, or that's no longer a profitable line of coverage for us. And it hurts if you as an agent, that was your favorite product to write, right? You're like, oh my God, like this was the best. And, you've been going on trips with these agents for the last decade, and, it's like you lose your family in a lot of ways, which sucks. But on the other hand, there's a lot of new opportunity and new cool products that are coming out. And the carriers I see are being very responsive to agent input. So like if you as an agent, and I think this is a big opportunity for all of us, is just have, like your mom told you, right? Like you have 2 ears and one mouth, right? If you're listening and are attuned to your clients and the conversations that you're having at the kitchen table and on the telephone, et cetera, and you're hearing, man, this is a gap in the market that, man, if we just had a product that did this, or man, this would be an amazing product if they would just do this rider or add this one thing or tweak this one thing or whatever. Talk to your upline, I mean, I know you've got a ton of connections. I have a ton of connections. I'm sure the other people that you have on the podcast have had a ton of connections. So just reach out to somebody that that is connected with your idea, and you can actually be part of these conversations and help create some new products. I mean, the carriers are very open to it right now.
Do you feel like that the telesales backlash has also sort of leveled off? Because I think right when COVID happened, it became the easy, convenient, and almost normal thing to do. And there was no, it was the Wild West, like your security word signatures. Like that was a bad idea. Whoever thought this was going to work out well? And people were just using the face-to-face process from home, and people were writing up fraud and here. And it was just, it all kind of came to a head very quickly. The carriers caught up with it. IP addresses got banned, signature processes changed. Where do you see the industry now in the telesales space? Because that is sort of the dominant place that a lot of distribution is growing, and hopefully it's growing more healthier now.
Yeah. So your question is,
how do you see telesales looking in the coming year now that it's kind of settled down a little bit?
I think it'll continue to explode. So frankly, it's such a matter of agent preference. Like I know you do a lot of work in the field. I'm a huge fan of that. I mean, I got started literally going door to door. So I just love sitting down at the kitchen table. It's the best, but on the flip side, it's impossible to argue with the scale. So like, I might have my personal preferences of how I like to do business, how I like to teach how to do business. There's no arguing that business that you close face-to-face is more steady and more solid. You get better referrals from it. I mean, there's all kinds of different benefits from doing business face-to-face that are, I mean, people that argue against it are just, I have a feeling that a lot of them just haven't been in the field in a while, and they're just, they're selling some snake oil because that's the way they want it to be. However, that being said, you cannot argue with how it opens up so much opportunity for agents, because used to be, if you're face-to-face only, I mean, you have to chase leads around, you have to most of us have to do travel trips. If you're recruiting and building an agency, it really limits where you can build, how you can build. You have to have a lot more, your new agents have to have capital to spend on the leads. They have to be able to travel. They have all these different things that are just not part of the equation on the telesales side. On the other hand, it's like, okay, how can I bring some of that warmth and connectivity and real clientele building that I do face to face? How can I bring that in over the phone? And I think that's the biggest change that I'm seeing, is that people are kind of moving away from slowly this transaction. Well, it's kind of bifurcating. So you have groups they're all in on the transactional. In fact, they're building call centers. They're going LOA and hiring a bunch of and that's very profitable, by the way. If you have anybody that's doing that, we've got a pretty good business model for it. That's not my favorite flavor of the business, because the successful agents, they're figuring out how to operate in their tonality different, because obviously how you do it over the phone and how you do it in person is different. They're learning to slow down. They're learning to really build rapport. I mean, I heard crazy stuff when telesales go, "Oh, we don't even build rapport. Just get right into it. People don't have." That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It was crazy when I heard it, and it's crazy now. Okay,
yeah.
Rapport is the name of the game, and agents, and you see serious salesmanship starting to emerge, which is good. because it's good for the client, it's good for the agent, it's good for your book of business, good for your upline's book of business. I mean, it's just, but because of all those things and because of all those reasons, carriers have learned their lessons. Uplines have learned their lessons with some, pretty steep chargebacks. I know I've had my share of them, and it's just like, oh my God, that's painful. So what do we need to learn from that?
Yeah.
I think that, again, all of these are positive shifts towards the future. So I think that'll continue to grow. I think also people are a lot more comfortable. Back when we were locked in our houses, it was one thing, right? But now that you're not, and you still choose to do business telesales wise, it's just like the customers that are receiving those calls and like doing business, which most people do, they're way more comfortable hopping on a FaceTime and even when, like, okay, I could do the entire sales presentation over the phone without ever seeing your face, but like, I like to look at the people I'm doing business with. Do you have any objection to hopping on a FaceTime real quick? Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think that just increases the quality of these engagements. So
that makes sense. Interesting question. You spent time at one organization, a lot of time at your initial stop in the industry, and you spent a significant amount of time building your agency now to the point where you're able to sell and operate in the managing partner realm. I think a lot of agents, a lot of mid-level builders, a lot of folks in that constantly like uproot and try to replant themselves elsewhere and miss an opportunity to ever get to the private equity realm. Oh, you kind of get where I'm going at with that. Do you see people that, constantly are trying to find somewhere new and easier and better to work versus just working where they're at and continuing to grow? When you made your decision to stay where you're at and get to where you are, can you kind of walk through that process for folks to listen into?
Yeah. So it's a great question, man.
Like when do you change and when do you not? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, and again, this is just my perspective. Everybody, and I'm a big believer in everybody's got to walk their own path. And so, and in your gut, like, hey, is this place a good place for me to, or am I sabotaging myself here? Right. So to answer the question, have you ever heard the story, Acres of Diamonds?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'll have to send you the recording. It's Earl Nightingale tells the story back in the 70s on cassette tape. That's my dad gave me these to listen to when I was like 10. And so the story is this, and it's a true story. So South Africa, there was a farmer that owned this big tract of land, big farm ranch. And back when diamonds were discovered in Africa. And the people were making a fortune, and it's like, oh my God, there's diamonds everywhere, and so he decided, okay, I've had this family farm for a while, but I don't like being a farmer. I don't want to be a ranch. I'm going to find some diamonds and be rich, right? And so he sells his farm and he goes and explores the African continent looking for diamonds, right? And dies, penniless, right? I think committed suicide, actually threw himself in a river, not to be too dark, but meanwhile, the person who bought his farm, this is a true story, discovered in his creek bed this big, shiny, glass-looking rock and put it on his mantle place, and had a visitor come by a year or two later. What's this? And he goes, oh, I found that in my creek bed. And he picks up, he's like, oh my God, this is a diamond. And he's like, no, it can't be a diamond. He's like, no, it's a diamond. What do you mean it can't be a diamond? He's like, because there's thousands of those all over my creek bed. And so you see where the story is going. Like, the guy who sold his farm to go look for diamonds somewhere else gave away the second largest diamond discovery on the entire continent of Africa. Right. And it literally sold them for next to nothing so that he could go look for diamonds somewhere else. Right. It's just it's a heartbreaking story. It gives me chills repeating it. But so, why do I say that? So, like, your uplines will tell you, like, hey, stick and stay and make it pay and all this other kind of stuff, right? And so at some point, you as an agent start to think, well, they're just lying. They're making money off me. Obviously, they don't want me to leave, and this is all crap, and whatever. And I've been there. I've experienced all those emotions. I think what you need to do is, okay, if you're going to go into the diamond business, right? First, familiarize yourself with what diamonds look like. Right? What do they look like? How do they grow? Where are they usually discovered? Oh, I own a piece of the African continent. Why don't I explore that first? and then go, right? So I think that's kind of how you'd make that decision, right? So every organization. So like I'll be vulnerable with you guys, right? So like, I have a agency. I'd say in fact, almost all of our life and annuity production goes through one upline. And a lot of agents have left that upline over the last, couple of years for different reasons. And of course, like I have relationships with these people, so I get called, "Hey, man, so much better over here. No, when are you going to get out of there?" Right? And I'm not a, I'm not a, I'm loyal, but at the same time, like I'm loyal to my family and to doing what's right for my kids. And so at the end of the day, like I'm going to make a financial decision. However, it's like, okay, well, let's look and see, is my comp good? Am I being treated fairly? Right? Is there a pathway to get where I need to go? Is it clearly laid out? Do I have an agreement with my partners on how I can get where I want to go? Am I being taken care of? Am I what is on your platform that I'm missing? Right? And a lot of times, I mean, not every time, but a lot of times the answer is some soft or non-quantifiable thing, right? Like, oh, the energy is so much better, oh, oh man, it's all about integrity. And, these guys have integrity, and it's like, whatever that's supposed to mean. And it's like, look, man, I mean, I didn't get into business with Jesus Christ. Okay. So I work with flawed people. I'm a flawed person. I work with flawed people. And at the end of the day, like, respect is based on, do you do what you say you're going to do? Are you honest when you make a mistake? And this is for you as an agent and for your upline, right? Are you honest when you make a mistake? And do you come up with an action plan on how to rectify the lack of integrity that you just had, or whatever the case may be, right? Are you able to speak truth to power? Are you able to receive coaching, right? And at the end of the day, like if that relationship, that's what I want out of my relationship. I don't need somebody to look up to or be a role model or anything else like that, right? We're all, I mean, at some point you're an adult and you like, okay, my role model is for myself is my God and my faith and different things like that. I'm chasing that level of integrity. Obviously you're going to fall short. You're a human being, right? So I don't expect that. And so it's just, how do we rectify what needs to be rectified and move forward together? And at the end of the day, like if there's not a quantifiable thing that I'm missing on my platform that I can only get from you, then I'm not gonna move, right? And it's not about any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? People a lot of times make decisions emotionally. In fact, 99% of the time we make decisions emotionally, right?
Very true.
And just don't be a prisoner to your emotions, right? Like, think through what am I hoping to gain? Can I gain that where I am or not? Can I bring it in from the outside? Are there different things that I can do? Again, doesn't mean you should never make a switch. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I'm a recruiter, so I'm trying to talk to people about making the switch all the time, right? Switch to work with me.
It's a dichotomy.
But at the end of the day, it's like, that's what I'm listening for, right? Because if I'm not doing a good service for the people that I'm talking to, like if I con you into coming to work for me, it's going to be a short-lived relationship, So I make a few grand and I earn myself a bad name, and now you're all over YouTube talking about what a jerk I am, right? You can't trust that guy, whatever. So at the end of the day, you do right by people, and then your business is going to grow with the people it needs to grow with. And not everybody needs to move. For me personally, when I was at my old company, I was a captive agent. So there were certain frustrations that I had that could not be dealt with on that platform, right? It was like, I explored everything. I was like, can I be non-captive? Can I continue to represent this product, but add on some new things? Can I do whatever? There's all different things that were there. Yeah. That at the end of the day, that didn't line up with their corporate goals, which that's their decision to make. And so therefore their corporate goals didn't line up with my life goals. That's it. That was a very easy decision to make. It was hard because I lost my family in a lot of ways, my work family. Right. Yeah. But I don't regret it for one bit, at all. And so to me, it's like, okay, I'm looking forward to how I want to grow my agency. Do I have all the tools that I need? If I don't have all the tools that I need, who can I reach out to in the family that I currently have to see about getting those tools?
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, if all of that fails, right, and this is the only thing that can get me where I need to go, well, then that makes sense to look at it, right?
Interesting. Yeah. I remember hearing the analogy. I did an interview with John Wetmore probably 2 years ago at this point, and he was talking about, I asked him about agents coming and going, leaving, and you put all your time, effort, and energy into somebody, and that somebody's there for 6 to 9 months, maybe 18 months, and then they get their feelings get a little hurt, they make an emotional decision, and they're off to the races. And he's like, people are going to get on the train with you here and get off there, but your train has to keep going along the way because it's trying to get more specific. And it's like when an agent loses a piece of business, they get really upset about it because that's a chargeback. When a mid-level manager or agency owner loses an agent, you're like, no, it's the same thing. But the higher you get and the longer you do it, the more perspective you can have and be like, all right, so they got off the train. Train hasn't stopped moving though.
That's right. Well, or sometimes it does though. I mean, I've definitely let my train stop moving, so especially when I was younger in the business, those first chargebacks, it's like, oh my God, do I want to keep doing this? I just, you forget about the big deposit that you got, last week or whatever, because now I got this big outlay that I got to fork over. Right. And it's like, how am I going to do that? The amount of this bill is higher than, because you're still in that early mindset of like, oh my God, I can't believe I just made this much money. Right. And then of course, okay, well now you got this charge back and it feels like that much money. And so I think you're right. The perspective that you need only comes from if a chargeback hurts, it's because you don't have enough clients.
Mm-hmm.
If an agent leaving you hurts, it's because you don't have enough agents. Right. And ultimately, you're responsible for keeping your train running down the tracks. And I agree with you 100%. And so the beautiful thing about this business, and the reason I love this business, Chris, is because you literally write your own job description every day. You wake up in the morning, if you're smart, you write one out and you stick to that job description day after day after day. But you can take a minute, step back, reassess, right? You can adjust, you could write yourself a brand new job description this morning, right? If you're watching this podcast and you hate the way that your insurance routine is going, that's on you. That's your responsibility to fix that. And you don't need, it's not like, okay, my first instinct is, oh, I'm going to switch my upline or get out of here or whatever, right? Dude, there's a lot of easier ways to switch it up than switching your, you know what I mean? So like, literally, I mean, I remember when I was first there, just to give you an idea, right? So for the first year and a half that I was in business, I went door to door in middle-class neighborhoods. Chevys and Fords in the driveway is what we look for, right? And literally like a solar guy or a pest control guy, right? I had a clipboard. I had this crossover bag that I wore. It had my back then we had paper applications. I had a 3-ring binder. I had these sleeves that you would put completed applications in and stuff. And I would just throw that over my shoulder and I would just walk down the street, drawing maps, collecting names, and no leads, just scratching it together. And I did great at that. But at a certain point, I got burnt out. I hated it. And I was like, okay, I need to switch things up. What do I need to do? Well, I love closing sales, but I hate cold calling. So, okay, I need to figure out how to get referrals, right? So I started, and I just made a rule for myself. And my new job description was, I don't make cold calls, right? And now, does that mean I never made a cold call? No, it just means my job description is I don't make cold calls, right? And so this particular door, I'm going to make a cold call on this door because I happen to be here, but I don't really do this. I'm just doing this because I'm here and why not? And I've got 10 minutes to kill, so I'm going to make this cold call, right? And so it changed the tenor of my conversations. It changed everything. And of course, then, referral-based business is so much better, than cold calling anyway. And changed my job description. And then after a while, I got tired of sitting down in people's, living rooms and kitchens. And I was like, okay, I need to learn how to sell to businesses, So I changed my job description. I only call on businesses, And so, and I just went cold turkey on it. And it took me about a week or so to figure it out. And I remember it was like day 9 or 10 or whatever, finally made my first sale, closed some business. And my upline was howling at me the whole time because I was reliable for 4 or 5 apps a day. Doing it the old way. And he's like, dude, you just got to give up on that, man. Just come on, just make some money. I'm like, I'm not giving up on this because I wrote my job description. This is my new job. Right. And you don't have the power to give me my job. I work for myself, right? So sit back and enjoy the overrides when they come in, or tell me you don't want to work with me anymore. Either way, I got a job to do. Goodbye, right? And I think my dad was an entrepreneur, so he started his own business, and it just that kind of is in my blood. I don't work for you. I work for myself, and we're in business together, right? But I'm not your employee. So you're responsible for your job description, and you can change it literally without changing anything else about your business, just by writing out your new job description and then sticking to it. And then structurally, yeah, maybe you do need to change an upline or a product or whatever eventually, but just change the things that are easy to change first, because they will make an impact in how you experience your business, which is really what we're all about here, right? So if I say, hey, I'm going to make this move because they're going to give me 15 points more comp, let's say, right? You're not making the move for the 15 points. Okay. That's the measurement that you're taking. But what you're making the move for is your anticipation of the increased standard of living that you're going to be able to have, right? The way you're going to experience your life, that's what you're being drawn to. And this is just the dial that you're turning, hopefully, to get that for you. Well, if you can twist this other dial and get an upgraded experience without having to uproot everything and have delay with carriers and damage relationships and interrupt your career growth unnecessarily, why wouldn't you make this adjustment first? Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Let's talk about something that I know I've experienced recently, and it's challenging for many people. I'm sure you've experienced it as well. It's roll up. How, as an agency owner, someone who's made it to the private equity table, how have you learned to kind of insulate, protect, or reduce the risk of roll up? Because it's never going to go away. It's just like a chargeback, except in a different perspective. But you can definitely see it, watch it, catch it, and mitigate it. How do you learn to protect yourself from roll up?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to just say I'm continuing to learn that, So I just had another one pop up on me the other day that no matter what the situation, it always is frustrating, right? But I mean, there's some real basic things you can do. So the first thing is to just acknowledge that this is a cost of doing business. Okay, so that's the first thing. Is just look. If we were in the solar business, okay, a cost of doing business is going to be lawsuits, right? So we're going to have lawsuits based on, we're going to damage some people's roofs unintentionally. We're going to have insurance claims. We're going to have different things that are going to happen because you're dealing with humans, right? And so, and not everything goes perfectly. So there's always a cost of doing business that exists in your business. There's something that sucks about it, right? And there is no magical business out there that is that is suck proof. Exactly. There's always going to be something. You just pick your poison. Okay. So in this particular case, and my buddy Brsan gave me the best line. I was dealing with a roll up that was sizable, and I'm on the phone with him. He's a good buddy of mine, and we started selling insurance together door to door years ago. And he's now he's one of my financial advisors. And so I'm just like, oh man, I can't believe this is unbelievable, right? And after letting me vent for a while, he was like, well, so how are you planning to take care of it? And I'm like, well, I'm just he's like, do you have the money? Can you just pay it? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I have the money, I can pay it. And he goes, okay. He goes, so listen, man, if the problem that you have can be solved by you writing a check, you don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's very true. So this is, but it's amazing. In fact, I want to share this with you because this is the first time I've actually shared this because it just occurred to me as I'm articulating it. I had this number in my bank account, right? And it was like this, and I'd never had a number that big in my bank account before.
Yeah.
But it was in my bank account. I'd never seen the money, right? I had just seen when I log into my app, I saw the pixels on the screen form this big number.
Yeah,
right. And because the dots made these particular shapes, I felt successful. I felt good about myself. I felt like I was the man, right? And when I stroke that check, before I was like, if I have to stroke this check, this number is going to change to this number, right?
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to feel different if these dots made a different shape on my app screen, right? Because to me, that shape represented, my retirement and my kids' college and all these other things that were going to happen in the future. They weren't today. Like there's no scenario in which I was going to pull that money out and go to Vegas or something, right? None. That money is not money for today. That's money for the future. It's money to grow the business, all those different things, right? It's leverage. It was not for me to go buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because I was already paying myself the money I need to go buy the things I want, right? So like that was business money. And so literally I didn't write a check. I punched a couple of numbers, entered some things on a keypad, and the pixels changed shape and my problem went away. Right. And then when the pixels changed shape though, I had a new problem. And the new problem was I no longer felt like a badass. I no longer felt like I was financially secure. I felt like I was under the gun. I felt like maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was, right? It caused this crisis of like confidence in terms of like, well, maybe I just need to be like really careful who I recruit. So I slowed down my recruiting. All these different things were affected because these dots changed shape on my phone. And so I just want to like put that out there for people because once I understood, and it was a couple months later before I understood what had happened, because literally all that happened was, there's a scenario. I had these dots. Now they changed to those dots, and I could have just kept moving. But instead, I cost myself even more money because I, slowed down my business growth. Does that make sense? And that's a completely self-inflicted wound, and I'm responsible, right? And so, and I think the other thing that, as we're talking about it is that when I've said the word responsible a couple of times, there's a word out there that I always kind of avoided, and it's the word blame, right? Or fault, right? Because one way to say that is, oh, that's my fault, right? I'm to blame, right? But it's pejorative. A better way to say it is I'm responsible, right? So I'm responsible. So at the end of the day, I'm responsible to make sure this train keeps moving. I'm responsible to keep this business growing. I'm responsible to make sure my kids grow up into, good human beings. I'm responsible to be a good husband, all those different things, right? I'm responsible. And so responsibility is not something, unfortunately, that you can give. Like we as leaders try to give responsibility to people. Responsibility is only something that can be taken, right? Yeah. You have to take responsibility. And when you do take responsibility, and I mean for everything, you take responsibility for being somewhere on time. You take responsibility for your results. You take responsibility for, setting goals. You take responsibility for achieving those goals or not achieving those goals, right? And when you do, it gives you insane amounts of personal power because you realize like, oh man, so I'm in charge. It's not because of traffic. It's not because of weather. It was not because of the interest rates. It's not because of whatever. It's because of me, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so the simple things you can do are obviously number one, make sure you have good agreement with your new agents that allows you to have legal remedies, right? If they stick you with a big piece of debt. Okay. So that's the first thing. And anybody that wants mine, I'm happy to share it with them. You can message me and I'm happy to DM you. You can just take mine and strip it out, do whatever you want with it. Okay. So it wasn't written by me. It was written by good attorneys that are good. So, although that's at the end of the day, it's not a fail safe, right? So that whole process going legal takes time. And sometimes it's just not worth it. So sometimes you just kind of write it off. So, but first, you have a good conversation up front, so there's good expectations, and then you watch your business. So if you don't have the time to do it, or you don't like doing it, or that's not your thing, you have to hire somebody that will do it for you. I considered having my wife do it because she's like super analytical and very detail oriented, but I don't recommend being in business with your spouse, just because there's other things to talk about that I'd prefer to spend my time talking about than business issues. So you can hire an admin. A VA is perfect for that because they can log into your portal, they can see what's going on, they can analyze and tell you, hey, heads up, this agent hasn't written a lot of business and they have this chargeback thing coming, and then so you're ahead of it, and you can have a conversation. Hey, Jim, I noticed this is happening here. I noticed that your business is in a certain place. How can I help you, man? Right? Before the chargeback even comes, because now we're having a conversation about something none of us want to talk about. Yeah. But ahead of that, if I can say, dude, like, obviously, how can I help you write more business? Because if I can help you write business, that will absorb that chargeback. It'll put money in your pocket and it keeps us moving forward. So, I mean, and there's a whole, we've got to now SOP, standard operating procedure, on how to handle debt forecasting and all that kind of stuff. And I'm happy to share that stuff. It's kind of boring for the podcast, but just think through those things and how can you be ahead of it rather than behind it.
Interesting. Okay. Let's wrap up with one more. What goal setting advice would you give a personal producer who's sitting at home, taking some intentional, strategic, and tactical time off, but also taking the time to plan for 2025 and beyond? What advice would you give them?
Well, so I have a weird relationship with goals. So I always hated setting them. For some reason, I don't know, something probably happened in my childhood, and we're all messed up there from something, right? Somebody said something unintentionally, made you feel a certain kind of way. You don't even know it. You hadn't distinguished it, but now you're like, I was always petrified of setting. Like anytime somebody would be like, "Hey, Hemati, you're gonna write 10,000 this week," even though I know I can write 10,000, it's like, I don't know, put my name on it, right? We would be at these conventions and they would say, hey, after convention, we're going to go on a travel trip and da da da. And if you're committing to at least writing this amount of business, stand up, right? Now look around. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
And you've been in those meetings, and I'm just like,
Bobby, don't you put that juju on me? Don't you do that to me?
I hated that. And it was like, I didn't want to stand up. And then, of course, you have to stand up because everybody's looking at, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just the worst. And then until you hit the number, like the whole week is a Monday sucks, Tuesday sucks, Wednesday, you finally hit your number because you set a low goal so that you knew you would hit it, and now all the rest of it's gravy. So now I can relax. I'm neurotic. I don't know if anybody listening, shares any of that vibe, but the one thing I can tell you, and I had kind of this breakthrough on goal setting a few years ago. And the breakthrough was this. What's important about a goal is not that you hit it. Okay. What's important about a goal is who you have to become to attempt to hit it. Because the journey of life, like, not to get all meta, but the journey of life is a becoming, right? So like my intention is that in 5 years, I'm a different man than I am today, right? Hopefully a better one. I like myself, but hey, there's that percentage that I know can level up, right? And so I'm on this journey of becoming. You are, every agent is, right? So many of us just go through life on autopilot. And you wake up and it's like, oh gosh, it's already 4th of July. It's crazy. I can't believe it's like right now. Oh my God, it's already Christmas. This is nuts. It was just Christmas. I just did this. But I think that's the biggest thing is like, dude, get excited about becoming, right? So if you're an agent, you're in this business. You're so blessed. So first of all, my hat's off to you for even attempting to get in this business, because it is the Super Bowl of sales. You're selling an intangible that nobody wants to talk about. They're never going to brag about their purchase. They don't wheel it around and show all their friends. They don't brag about it. You look at my new policy and look at the interest rate, right? Like nobody. It's just it is a very thankless piece of business that we address, right? And it's also so necessary. Like there's nothing more fundamental than providing for your family, right? I mean, there's nothing. And so it's like we're addressing that big need. We're helping people be a better version of themselves, right? By helping them step into a new future with the new them, that where now they've taken responsibility for their family and their family's, financial security, right? Mm-hmm. So get excited about that for yourself, right? Like you don't need another program or another podcast or whatever, or another series, another education to be the same person you are now. Like you don't need that. You just go to the beach, right? So I love the beach. So get excited about the becoming. And when you get excited about the becoming and you realize that, hey, setting a goal that is almost impossible to hit, actually, the more I have to stretch, the more that this is outside my comfort zone, the more becoming I will do. Mm-hmm. Make sense? So
it's the journey, not the destination.
Yes. I mean, it's all, and all that's like, it's like they're what do you call them? They're,
euphemisms or
phrases. It sounds very trite, right? I've heard that 100 times, but it's also it's so fundamental. It's true, right? So if you're excited about growing and becoming, right, then set a big goal, right? It's okay if you don't hit it. That's not the point, right? But you have to want to hit it. You have to intend to hit it. You have to put your word that you're going to hit it, and then you have to hold yourself accountable for when you fail to hit it, right? But my intention is to fail to hit all my goals. So, that was a great shift for me. It's like, dude, actually, I'm going to make these goals. I'm going to put them down by when and all that. And my intention is to fail at every single one of these, right? But not by much, right? That's it. Just not by much. We're going to fail on every single one of these, just not by much, right? So then it's just a matter of managing that delta of how much did I fail by. And at the end, we have the accountability. I held myself accountable. We failed, right? But we didn't fail. We just failed to achieve this ridiculous goal that we put out here. Does that make sense?
It does.
So, and then it's just a game, because that's all it is anyway. So.
Literally, yeah. If you didn't get anything out of today's conversation, you don't have a pulse and may probably need to find a different place, different industry to spend time in, because that was some of the most interesting and engaging and practical and high level and somewhere in between content you could possibly put together, generally unscripted, over the course of 45 minutes. Appreciate, Eric, you taking the time to give that as a gift to the industry. What we ask in return is you engage in the content, like, comment, share, and let others know what we've done, because if you don't click the button, maybe someone won't get to see the conversation you learned from today. Eric, thanks for filming with me today.
Thanks for having me, man. My honor.
And this concludes another episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague. And if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please leave those too. Any input is greatly appreciated. Thank you.